Amy Slayton, star of 1,000 Pound Sisters, is in the news again, but this time it's for a different reason: controversy. It was recently revealed that Amy is 5 months pregnant and that the child's father is Brian Lovvorn. However, rather than bringing joy to the family, the news has caused anger and worry. Amy's sister, Tammy Slayton, and everyone else in the family believe that Amy may be neglecting her previous child, and they fear that the new child will cause tension in the home. Amy and Brian are adamant about their decision, saying that the new life will strengthen their love, but in the eyes of the family, it is a sad and careless choice that could bring Amy's life back topsy-turbulence. Though dreams don't always mirror reality, Amy Slayton had always envisioned a joyful, quiet life for her kids, one where they would be safe, loved, and away from the turbulence that used to define her world. Lately, however, Amy's life has been anything but tranquil. At first, the news was only whispered among a few family members, but it quickly spread like wildfire throughout Dixon, Kentucky. Amy Slayton is pregnant again, 5 months along. The father is Brian Lovvorn, who had swept into Amy's life following her tumultuous divorce. Amy initially imagined that everyone would be delighted for her, that her family would see what she saw, which was a fresh start, a second shot at love and parenthood. But instead of happiness, she encountered criticism and resentment. The first to speak up was her sister Tammy, who had been her closest confidant during years of hardship. "Amy," Tammy stated one evening in a dejected tone, "you can't just start over like nothing happened. What about Gage? What about his future? You already have a child who needs you." Tears welled up in Amy's eyes as she muttered, "This baby will complete our family, it won't replace Gage." However, neither Tammy nor the rest of the Slayton family were persuaded. Their tiny house was tense. Meals that had once been filled with laughter were now eaten in quiet, and every discussion became a conflict between Amy's optimism and her family's anxiety. They believed Brian was not the guy Amy believed him to be. He was charming but restless, kind but unpredictable, and they were concerned Amy was making the same mistakes she had in the past, putting love before responsibility, emotion before rationality. Even so, Amy held on to him. Brian's easy smile and charming assurances made her feel young again, alive even, promising that they would move into a new home, raise their kids together, and move on from the past. As the weeks went by, cracks started to show. Brian was frequently absent, working late, coming home exhausted, and occasionally irritable. Amy started to notice messages on his phone that made her uncomfortable. She wanted to ask, but she was afraid to do so because she couldn't bear to experience another heartbreak. "We can make this work, Amy," Brian said, holding her close. "You've spent too long listening to everyone else. It's time to live for us." Tammy, meantime, noticed the signals. "You're fighting everyone for him, but is he fighting for you?" she cautioned. "He's not the man you think he is." Amy remained silent, knowing in her heart that her sister might be correct. Then came the doctor's appointment, which was the turning moment in Amy's life. The doctor calmly informed Amy that her health history made her pregnancy high risk and that stress, bad nutrition, and sleep deprivation may put her and the unborn child in danger. Brian dismissed it when she informed him, saying, "You're strong, Amy. You've been through worse." "Doctors always exaggerate," he said. However, Amy was no longer certain. She felt a surge of remorse as she watched her small boy, Gage, play with his toys on the floor, his laughter resonating throughout the room. What if Tammy was correct? What if her decisions were endangering her children? Days became restless nights. The home felt heavier and colder. Tammy stopped coming as much because she needed space, and Amy felt as like she was getting farther away from everyone she loved, not just her sister. Amy couldn't sleep one night, so she stood in front of the mirror with her palm on her big belly and tears running down her cheeks. "Why does it always have to hurt?" she whispered to her reflection. "I just wanted to be loved." Amy silently vowed to safeguard her unborn child, Gage, and herself in that somber, lonesome moment, even if it meant standing by herself. Amy packed a small bag and drove to Tammy's house the following morning. Amy took a deep breath as Tammy opened the door, looking astonished but silent. "You were right," she replied quietly. I need to be a mother first. I can't keep chasing love that breaks me. Tears welled up in Tammy's eyes, and she gave her sister a strong hug without saying a word, two broken hearts attempting to mend. Amy knew the journey ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in a long time, she felt something tangible, strength. Amy also prayed in a whisper as the sun rose over Dixon that her kids would learn to enjoy calm rather than chaos. But Amy Slayton was sitting on the couch with her hands shaking and her eyes red and swollen. The previous evening, she had been arrested for possession of prescription pills without a valid prescription, which shocked her family and fans. The day started like any other in Dixon, Kentucky. Humid air, the hum of cicadas, and a camera crew quietly getting ready outside her modest home. "We can't just sit here and pretend it's all fine," Tammy Slayton, her sister and a steadfast friend through life's ups and downs, said in a broken voice as she paced the living room with her phone in hand. "She needs help. Real help this time." Amy remained silent as the house felt too heavy and too quiet for the first time in years while her two boys were spending the weekend with their grandma. The family assembled, including Tammy, their half-brother Chris, and even their cousin Amanda, who had driven 4 hours to be there. Amy was unaware that the producers had planned an intervention, so the news crew was not prepared for what they were about to see. Amy's face was flushed with confusion as she walked into the room. "What's going on?" she questioned in a feeble voice. "We love you, Amy, but we're losing you. You're not the same sister I used to laugh with, the one who dreamed of raising her boys in peace," Tammy said as she slowly got to her feet. Amy, with tears in her eyes, murmured, "I thought those pills would help me keep going. I didn't mean to get in trouble. I just wanted to stop feeling so tired all the time." "We all make mistakes, girl. But this ain't just about you anymore. It's about your babies. They need their mama back." Amanda gave her a tissue, but her tone was strong. There was a long period of silence in the room as cameras silently rolled as Amy sobbed uncontrollably, her cries resonating off the walls. "I don't want to be like this," she said. "I want to get better. I promise." Despite her own health issues, Tammy said, "Then let's do it together. We'll check you into rehab tomorrow. You ain't alone," as the family embraced her with tears in their eyes. But Tammy Slayton sat up slowly, blotting sleep from her eyes, and reached for her vape pen on the nightstand as the morning sunlight filtered through the curtains of her Kentucky home, softly illuminating the oxygen machine that hummed next to her bed. As she inhaled, the mist swirled in front of her like a silent cloud of comfort, and the familiar mint flavor filled her mouth. Recently, though, that ease had given way to worry. After losing hundreds of pounds, Tammy was finally free of the weight that had been keeping her in bed, but one habit persisted: vaping. She had been working diligently for months to be eligible for her skin removal surgery, a life-altering procedure that would be the last step in her weight loss journey. One afternoon, while sitting on the porch with Amy's two children playing in the yard and laughter resonating through the peaceful neighborhood, Amy told Tammy, "You know, the doctor said you have to stop. He said it could mess with your lungs before surgery." Looking down at the pen she was holding, Tammy sighed and said, "I know, Amy. But it's hard. It helps with my anxiety. When I quit eating, I needed something else." "You've come too far to risk it now. You're finally living again, Tammy. Don't let this take it away," Amy said, putting a hand on her sister's shoulder. What if the surgeon declined to operate? What if her lungs weren't strong enough? What if this one habit cost her all she'd worked for? Tammy couldn't sleep that night and lay awake, staring at the ceiling. 1 week later, Tammy sat anxiously in Dr. Smith's office waiting room, her heart thumping as her name was called, and the air smelling of disinfectant. Dr. Smith reviewed her most recent test results inside the examination room and said, "Tammy, you've made incredible progress. Your blood pressure, your mobility, your mental health, all of it is better. But your nicotine levels are still too high. If you don't quit vaping soon, I can't clear you for surgery." Her throat constricted as the words struck her like a blow to the chest. "So, what do I do?" she said softly. He said plainly, "You gave up. This is just the last mountain. You've conquered much more difficult obstacles." In the weeks that followed, Tammy faced one of the most difficult battles of her life, substituting breathing techniques, counseling, and long walks outside for vaping. Although the cravings caused her to cry on some nights, she persisted, and Amy and her family supported her at every turn. Amy gave her a tiny gift one evening, a framed picture of the two sisters taken before to the start of their adventure, with the words, "We started this together, and we'll finish it together," scribbled on the bottom. As Tammy held the frame, tears welled up in her eyes, and for the first time in years, she felt really proud of her strength as well as her weight loss. As he went over her updated test results 3 months later, Dr. Smith grinned and said, "Tammy, you did it. You're clear for surgery." "I really did it," Tammy said, covering her mouth with shaking hands and tears running down her face. "You truly did," he said. That day, Tammy took a deep breath and smiled as the cool, clear autumn wind caressed over her face as she left the clinic. It was devoid of smoke and dread. Tammy felt lighter than ever before, both physically and spiritually, for the first time in her life. The future was clear, and the clouds had vanished. But Amy Slayton rolled out of bed on a sunny Saturday morning in Dixon, Kentucky, with the light just beginning to peep over the horizon. Her son Gage was already awake and running about the living room with his toy cars, and she grumbled softly yet grinned, knowing that the day would be hectic. Today was meant to be unique. Amy and Tammy had made a commitment to one another that they would spend the weekend concentrating on their own personal development, free from disagreements and negativity, just spending time together, having fun, and confronting their anxieties. Amy's anxiety at the will Tammy used to tease Amy about it, saying, "Girl, you can lose 300 pounds, but still can't drive a car without shaking like a leaf." Amy had just had her learner's permit renewed, but she hadn't driven in months, and every time she sat behind the wheel, her heart raced and her palms grew sweaty. Amy, however, was resolved to change that today. "Today, Tammy, I'm taking us to the park," she declared with assurance. Surprised, Tammy blinked and said, "Are you sure you don't want to call a taxi?" before grinning with pride. Amy's foot hung uneasily over the gas pedal as she started the car, her heart thumping, while Tammy sat next to her, holding up her phone, half ready to film, half ready to ring for assistance. When they finally arrived at the park, Amy felt a tremendous weight lifted off her shoulders. It wasn't just a short drive. It was evidence that she could literally face her fears and move forward. The car jerked forward once before steadying. "See, I told you I could do it," Amy exclaimed excitedly as Tammy laughed so hard she began coughing. The sisters threw a family supper at Amy's house that night, and their brother Chris brought his renowned barbecue ribs, and Amanda brought handmade cornbread. The aroma filled the air, taking everyone back to the good old days. "You know, it's weird. We used to fight about everything. Food, the show, who's losing more weight, but now it feels peaceful," Tammy said thoughtfully as they sat around the table. "We've all been through a lot, but perhaps that's what makes this moment so special," Amy said, nodding. It was hectic, noisy, and flawless, the kind of supper they hadn't had in years. For a time, everyone just ate and laughed, with Chris constantly boasting about his new low-carb sauce, Tammy cracking jokes, and Amy's kids giggling on the floor. The sisters participated in a 5K walk for obesity awareness the following morning, which Tammy initially thought was a horrible idea. "Girl, I barely walked to the mailbox without breaking a sweat," she grumbled. Amy, however, was adamant. "It's about showing up, not about being the fastest." On the day of the run, the sisters, dressed in matching pink shirts that read "Slayton Strong," appeared anxious but prepared as dozens of people stood at the starting line, grinning and stretching. The first mile was difficult. Amy's legs hurt and Tammy's breathing became labored, but as they arrived to the halfway point, everyone began to applaud, including strangers. "You got this, Tammy," someone exclaimed. "Go, Amy, go." The cheers gave them the power they didn't know they had, and they gave each other a strong hug as they crossed the finish line, fatigued and sweaty, but beaming from ear to ear. With tears sparkling in her eyes, Tammy spoke the words, "I never thought we'd do this." "We didn't just walk, Tammy. We walked into a new chapter," Amy said with a giggle and a face wipe. Amy was pleased of herself for keeping her family together through everything, not only for driving and finishing the 5K, as she sat on the porch that evening at home and watched the sunset. Life ain't easy, but we're doing it. One step at a time, Tammy replied as she joined her, drinking a bottle of water.
Yeah.
And for once, I'm not afraid of what's next, said Amy with a smile. It wasn't a perfect existence, but it was real and theirs, and the two sisters sat quietly, listening to the crickets and laughter from within the house. And that was more than sufficient for Amy and Tammy Slayton. But as always, the real entertainment at the Slayton family's weekly barbecue in Dixon, Kentucky, came from one man, Chris Combs, Amy and Tammy's brother, and the self-described funniest man in Dixon. The smell of grilled burgers filled the air, and laughter reverberated throughout the yard on one of those infrequent sunny afternoons. Amy rolled her eyes and remarked, "Chris, the last time you burned the burgers so bad, even the dog refused to eat them." Chris was standing proudly in front of the grill, sporting an apron that read, "Kiss the cook if you dare." "That's because I was testing new flavors. Charcoal Supreme." Chris smiled. "You mean flavor of failure," exclaimed Tammy, who was seated in her wheelchair nearby, chuckling. Chris leaped back, brandishing a spatula like a sword, while the laughter continued and a tiny flame suddenly erupted from the grill. "Fire! Fire! The grill's possessed," he said loudly. "You sure you're not the one possessed, Chris?" Amy teased, squirting it with water, which swiftly extinguished the flame. "Perhaps the grill is simply envious of my attractive personality," Chris shrugged. The entire family burst out laughing, and Tammy, who seldom ever smiled, started crying because she was laughing so hard. The gym disaster Amy wanted them all to remain dedicated to their health quest, so she persuaded Chris and Tammy to join her at the local gym a few days later. Chris, on the other hand, took it like a comedy performance. The treadmill beeped loudly as soon as he stepped on it, and the screen flashed, "Warning, overload." "I think it's trying to tell me something," Chris replied, looking down in shock. "Maybe start by walking to the fridge instead, buddy." Tammy clutched her stomach, unable to breathe, while Amy laughed so hard she almost fell off the stationary cycle. Then, just as one of the dumbbells slid and rolled beneath the treadmill, Chris flexed dramatically and exclaimed, "Call me Chris Schwarzenegger," while attempting to hoist a pair of dumbbells. After the gym teacher glanced at him, Chris hurriedly remarked, "It's not my fault. Gravity is against me." Pran's great family dinner. When the family agreed to eat supper at Amy's house one evening, everyone was eager to eat because Amy had spent hours preparing it, but Chris had other ideas. He subtly substituted pickle juice for Tammy's typical sweet tea. Tammy's eyes widened as she took a large gulp. She cried, coughing violently. "That's called detox water, sis," Chris exclaimed, laughing so hard he was having trouble breathing. Between chuckles, Amy reprimanded him, saying, "Chris, you're going to kill yourself someday." Even Tammy couldn't contain her laughter for very long, though, and she grinned as she remarked, "You're lucky I love you, or I'd pour this over your head." Everyone was anxious when Amy decided to record a family TikTok dance challenge a few weeks later, but Chris insisted he had natural rhythm. Chris attempted to spin when the music began, tripped over his own foot, and fell directly onto the couch, yet he was precisely in time with the beat. The internet called the video the Slayton spin, and even TLC posted it with a description, "When your dance moves are as heavy as your laughter." The video went viral overnight. Tammy mocked, "You're famous for falling on your butt." Chris's family never let him forget that he had become an internet phenomenon. "Hey, some people fall from grace. I fell into fame," Chris said with pride. A family that shares a laugh ultimately. Chris's antics were the source of joy for the Slayton family, who relied on him to keep them cheerful despite their health issues, emotional ups and downs, and weight loss challenges. No matter how hard life gets, if Chris is around, it's impossible not to laugh, Amy once remarked, wiping away tears of laughter. "Yes, he might burn the burgers, break the treadmill, and play pranks on me every week, but he's our clown, and we wouldn't trade him for anything," Tammy said, nodding. "To family, food, and fun. The 3 F's that keep us going," Chris said, lifting his glass and smiling. The Slayton family once again found laughter to be the most effective form of rehabilitation. Welcome to my channel, lovely viewers. My name is Mina. I hope you're having a great day. Please remember to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the video.